Welcome to The Secrets of Success. By following the proven techniques of the guests who appear on this series, you'll learn that even successful people run into detours and failures, and how you can apply their success techniques to change your life.
You're now listening to the most unique show on radio, the show dedicated to making you a success. Want to be more creative? Just eat, sleep, and innovate, says our guest, Scott Anthony. Scott, thanks for being with us today.
Bill, it's my pleasure.
Scott, you've written a book with that same title, Eat, Sleep, and Innovate, and that's how I got it. And you say it's a guide to make creativity a habit. Can we really do that? I thought creative people were those kind of absent-minded people. They wore a green sock and a red sock. They forgot to brush their teeth, things like that, but they come up with great ideas. But can any of us do this?
Yeah, let me just step back and explain the title of the book, because the answer is a clear yes, but the title of the book helps to explain it. So the title basically refers to the fact that we eat every day. I really hope that you sleep every day. So why isn't it that we innovate every day? In a world that's changing as quickly as our world is changing, we all need to improve our ability to innovate. Now, there is lots of research about creativity, and it does, in fact, show that there is some percent of your ability to be creative that comes from your DNA. That's roughly a third of your ability to be creative. So there is a difference, of course, between the geniuses and everybody else, but 2/3 of your creative capacity is something that is nurtured. It's something that is learned. It's something that's developed. I've got 4 kids out here in Singapore. I don't have to teach them how to be creative, how to be curious, how to experiment, how to do different things, because they're kids. So the question isn't, do we have it inside of us? The question is, when did we forget about it? And how do we release back that childlike wonder that allowed all of us at one point to be natural innovators? We absolutely all can do this. Are we all going to be Steve Jobs? Of course not. But we all can get substantially better for sure.
We all have metrics today. Every sport and everything else has metrics behind it. Are there a certain number of people that the metric people say are creative? Is it 2 out of every 100 or 1 out of 1,000?
You know, it's really interesting. There was a study that was done by NASA in the, I think, early 1970s that showed something like 98% of children showed on a very simple test as being creative geniuses. And something like 2% of adults would show the same result on tests. So the idea is, again, you have the innate capacity to do it, but it does degrade over time if you don't actively practice it. And that's what the book is all about. It's about how do we follow consciously the habits, the behaviors that allow us to improve our ability to innovate. I should, by the way, define what that means, because it's important that we know what we're talking about. We define innovation very simply as something different that creates value. Something different is vague and open-ended intentionally. It gives space for things like world-saving vaccines and hypersonic planes, but it also gives space for day-to-day things that make life just a little bit better. Innovation isn't the job of the few, it's the responsibility of the many. Creates value separates innovation from inputs, precursors like invention or creativity. You need those, of course. But until you create new revenues or profits, if you're inside a company, a happier kid, if you're a parent, whatever, until you have actually moved the needle on a problem that matters, in our eyes, you have not innovated. As Thomas Edison famously said, genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. Innovation's a pretty sweaty job.
I'm getting the feeling I should listen more to children now, and maybe not for the scientific things that take years of study and learning, but for basic problems that we have around the house. You're saying they're the most creative, so they certainly can't hurt. I'm not the creative person, so I'll ask a younger person next time I have a problem and see if they can help me turn off the water or learn how to do something that is not in my nature. Let's put it that way.
Just on that point, thinking about innovation in unexpected places, we had a discussion at the end of last year when it was around Thanksgiving time saying, what are things we're thankful for this year? What are the good things that have happened in what was a pretty dark year for many people? And then we started swapping innovation stories. And one of the things we were remembering when Singapore went to its strictest restrictions back in April of 2020, my now 15-year-old son, Charlie, came up with the innovative idea of Camp Bonk, B-O-N-K, as just a way to keep his 3 younger siblings engaged, and came up with the schedule and activities and all that. And this is the kind of stuff that kids do without being told, without thinking about it, without making it too hard. And I think you're absolutely right, Bill. There's a ton that we can learn from children.
Now, you bring up a good point because, of course, just what we went through, and virtually, I'm going to say every week on the news, there's some major either tragedy or event or something that's happening that, of course, catches our interest. Does this uncertainty in the world, does that increase the need for innovation and also bring out our innovative talents, as we see with the pandemic, coming up with a vaccine, new ways to counter it, maybe not all perfect, but at least as best as we can do at this time?
Yeah, as the old saying goes, necessity is the mother of invention. So when people sense that there's a need, you have people come up with all sorts of creative solutions. And this idea that this is a more pressing need, most of my life is spent as a business consultant advising big companies all around the globe. And it is very clear to leaders everywhere that innovation is an imperative. This is not a revolutionary idea. We've got technologies that are advancing at breakneck paces. We've got the lines between industries blurring, customer expectations, employee expectations are changing, and these shocks just keep getting thrown at us. Everybody needs to improve their ability to do something different that creates value. Now, I think one of the questions behind the question, too, is does a situation like a pandemic, yes, there's more need, but does the fact that we're doing a lot more virtual work, is that good or bad for innovation? Innovation really likes having people together and the kinetic energy and so on. So that's been a challenge, but the opportunity has been you can do things like this. I can zoom in from Singapore and we can have a real human conversation. The barriers between connection have gone so far down that it's so much easier for people to collaborate in new ways. So as always, there's some good, some bad in everything.
And professions that I think thought you could never do it without being in the office and waiting 2 hours for your appointment or your scheduled meeting with the doctor, the lawyer, the accountant, they've been able to do it over Zoom, or a lot of what they didn't think they could do, and the world still seems to be running pretty properly, let's put it that way. So I guess we're learning that we can get along with these things, and it doesn't hurt to advance. We don't have to do it the same way as we did in 1940 or even 1988 or something like that. You talked about changing people's habits, and I think it's on page 7 and 8 in your book. You give certain rules for that. Can you tell us about those rules?
Yeah, the basic idea, if you're trying to change habits, and this is the big thing that we talk about in the book, we say, okay, observation, humans enter the world curious and creative, but established organizations are not curious, creative places. We seem to lose this capacity as we go through our lives, and organizations are in many cases even worse. So we say the basic problem is pretty simple. Innovation is something different that creates value. Organizations exist to do what they're currently doing better, faster, or cheaper. They don't exist to do something different. So what the challenge you have is in organizations, you have this hidden barrier, the way that things have always been done, institutionalized inertia that sometimes is an addiction to business as usual. So the basic answer in the book is to rip a page from the habit change literature and use a tool that we call a BEAN. A BEAN is an acronym. The first part of the acronym, BE, is a behavior enabler. This is to give people direct tools to help them do new things. Give them a checklist, give them a coach, have a formal ritual, go after the logical part of their brain where they carefully consider things. Couple that with the AN, artifact and nudge. This is having a visual reminder or having a leaderboard that says, Bill, you're number 17 of all local radio shows, and you're so much more motivated to get to number 1. I'm sure you're already there, so your rivals have to do this instead of you. The idea here is those artifacts and nudges are indirect ways to go after your unconscious to inspire behavior change. So if you fight the inertia with a BEAN, behavior, enabler, artifact, and nudge, you can overcome it. You can encourage the habits that drive innovation success. That's the basic idea. There's more stuff around it, but that's the thing that we talk about in the book.
I love that whenever we learn a new term or a new word, and now I can drop that into conversation, the key to innovation is a BEAN. And of course, someone will ask me what it is, and I can echo your explanation and sound like I'm as smart as you are. I want to mention, Scott, that you said before, you work with major corporations doing this. And of course, we know corporations aren't there to waste their time. It's nice to be creative, but they want to make money. They have to show the bottom line. They have to show the employees, the stockholders, what they're doing. So this stuff obviously works, what you're saying, while you're talking lightheartedly to us and we're having fun with it, making fun of the word BEAN. But big business is using this. And I think in your book, you actually showed that the results could be traced. I think a business is 3.5 times more likely to outperform their peers when they follow this innovation culture that you've talked about. They grow revenue 35% faster, and you probably know more statistics. I just copied a few of them out of your book.
Well, you hit the big ones. So, this is a secret to outperforming rivals. It is a secret to connecting with customers. It is a secret to having more engaged employees. It is a secret to having higher performing teams. And the good news is this is a secret that's in plain sight. So this is not something that is a carefully guarded secret. There's not just, of course, the book Eat, Sleep, Innovate, which we love. There's lots of other things out there for those who really want to get better at innovation. And if you do it with discipline, you do it with rigor, you do it at scale, you can get those types of business results. You can also get the human results of being able to really tap into your whole capacity and potential. It's one of my big beliefs and passions. There is an innovator inside all of us. Again, the kids. I've got 4 of them. They're curious Charlie, they're hopeful Holly, happy Harry, thoughtful Teddy. That kind of creature exists in all of us. You bring it out, life is just a happier place because you're going and finding creative solutions to problems, and you're overcoming obstacles, and you're going and having more impact, and you're having fun while you're doing it. So this is something that I really do hope that everybody learns something from.
Oh, I'm sure we will. Scott, at this point in the show, we want our audience to know that you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan. Our guest today is Scott Anthony. His book is Eat, Sleep, Innovate. And Scott, we're going to ask you where we can get the book and if there's a website where we can learn more about it.
Yeah, so the book, of course, is available on all online channels, Amazon.com. Our publisher is Harvard Business Review Press. It's available there as well. And I hope in your local bookstore, and I'm hoping you still have a local bookstore as well.
We do.
I know it is on the shelves here in Singapore, so I'm assuming it's on the shelves in the Nassau area as well. EatSleepInnovate.com is the book's website, and that has more information about how to get it and a bunch of free downloadable tools from the book as well.
And if all the big companies are using this, I think our little, whether it's a local restaurant or a law office, accounting office, architectural firm, we can pick up a lot of pointers and maybe go zooming ahead of all the competition just by listening to what Scott has to say. Now, Scott, in your book, there's the term culture of innovation. What does that really mean to us? We hear a winning culture. We know the team. Every team wants to win. They have a winning culture, even though they haven't won more than 2 games in the last 5 years. But what does that mean on a corporate level?
Yeah, so we try to keep, again, things reasonably simple. So we described or defined innovation a little bit earlier, something different that creates value. And we say a culture of innovation is one in which the behaviors that allow you to do this, the behaviors that drive innovation success, come naturally. So it's not a place where you have to force people to follow these behaviors. It's not a place where you have to wish that they do it. They just do it without even thinking about it. Now, of course, I've got to define what those behaviors are. We have 5 of them. Behavior 1 is being curious. Behavior 2 is being customer obsessed. Behavior 3 is being collaborative. Behavior 4 is being adept in ambiguity. And behavior 5 is being empowered. All reasonably straightforward things, but again, they cut against the grain in many organizations. So ones that have a culture of innovation, again, do these things naturally.
Now, you say naturally, but does that, when you walk into a company, can you sense that after maybe, I'm going to say maybe for you it's a few seconds, minutes, or an hour, but do you just notice that, or is it that the leader is very innovative, he or she is dynamic, they seem to be thinking outside the box, or is it something that's been structured, like putting up a bookcase? Do the people learn that when they come in? Are they taught a different way of thinking or approaching a problem?
Bill, it's a great question. So I would say sometimes you can get deceived when you walk into an organization, and imagine we're at happy times where we actually are physically walking into an organization, because you'll look around and you'll see things, and those things might be, bright colored lights. There might be a foosball or ping pong table. There might be a cafe that serves all these things. You say, oh, these are things that I associate with an innovative organization because a place like Google has things like this. So I see that the visual artifacts, so this is probably a very innovative place. Now, it might be, but those artifacts can also be very deceiving. What a leader does too can be very deceiving. Is it good to have a leader that is walking the talk, that's following the behaviors, that's a visionary, that's pushing the bleeding edge? Of course, that's a really good thing. But you're not at culture of innovation level if you see these things. If you see things on the wall, you see a leader doing this. It really is watching. What are the day-to-day behaviors that the widespread groups of people in the organization are doing? Are they always asking questions? Are they saying things like, why are we doing it this way? How might we do it differently? Well, that's a sign that they're being curious. Are they always thinking about the customers they're trying to serve? Maybe the external ones, or maybe it's the internal ones, an HR person saying, how do I provide better service to my colleagues? Are they collaborating? Are they working across different parts of the organization, remembering that innovation magic happens at intersections? Are they experimenting? Are they trying different things, recognizing that early ideas are imperfect, so you have to handle that ambiguity? And are they talking about things, or are they actually doing things? Are they empowered to move from speaking to doing? Those types of things that you can't observe usually in the first 5 minutes, even the first hour, many times in organizations, those things being done by wide populations inside organizations at the iconic places like the Google and the Disney Pixar and 3M and places like that, that's what really connotes a culture of innovation.
Now, Scott, let's say in a month from now I meet you in an airport. Scott, how are you? And you remember who I am. I identify myself. And we're going to have some time to talk because we see our plane is late and we're on the same plane. And I say to you on the side, we had this interview on the radio. That was a lot of fun, but I'm looking for a new job now. And can you advise me what would be the best innovative companies for me to look at? How would you answer that to me? Just sitting in an airport or a casual table talking over dinner?
Yeah, the thing I would say, Bill, is that the innovative companies can often be where you don't expect them. So I gave you the icons because everyone can associate with the Disney, Pixar, or 3M, or Google, or Amazon.com, or Netflix, or places like that. But, one of the things that we passionately explore in the book are these things that we call no-debts, normal organizations doing extraordinary things. So we started in the book with DBS Bank, which is a pretty boring organization. It's a bank here in Singapore. We talk about the Salvation Army. We talk about UNICEF. We talk about a small not-for-profit in the Philadelphia area called the Settlement Music School, Intuit, the financial software company, places that are not places that I think most people would say, hey, that's where I would expect innovation to happen. So my answer to you would be, look everywhere. I know that's not a very helpful answer because you're saying I want to know where to look, but it can happen in any place. And, back to where we started with, necessity being the mother of invention, where do we see people really being forced to innovate today? Well, in the education space, we essentially had 10 years of change happen in about 3 months last year. So people now have a crying need to do something different that creates value. In healthcare, there were widespread forces at work saying that we're going to see a lot of disruption in healthcare with telemedicine, with customized and personalized medicine, and a whole bunch of other stuff that's, again, been accelerated because of the pandemic. So my basic answer when people say, where do I look to find a place that is really getting good at innovation and really needs it? Look everywhere, which again is not that helpful, but that is the truth.
And it's funny, some of the companies that you mentioned, and they seem to be either not-for-profit or I think a bank, those would not have been even on my top 100 or 1,000 list if I knew that many companies. They just wouldn't come to mind as something that would be innovative, certainly not innovative. And I'll relay why as we talk later on. Scott, once again, at this point in the show, in case our audience is listening and say, wait, who is this man? How can I find out more? We want our audience to know that you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan. Our guest today is Scott Anthony. His book is Eat, Sleep, and Innovate. And Scott, can you tell us where we can get the book and a website where we can learn more of this interesting information?
Yeah, eatsleepinnovate.com is the place to start. It also has links to other online retailers that sell the book, Amazon.com, among others, and your local bookstore is a great place to go always. I love spending afternoons in the local one here in Singapore.
Me too. Not Singapore, but an afternoon in the bookstore is my idea of a real happy time and a happy place. Let's put it that way. Now, Scott, do innovators get properly rewarded? We know really good salespeople can make a lot of money no matter what they're selling. I mean, they can be at the top of the charts and be up there with the entrepreneurs, very well-paid physicians, medical people, etc. But how about innovators? Are they properly rewarded?
So it's a great question. So I would say no buts. So why do I say no but? So no, they're usually not properly rewarded, but that's not actually the problem. A lot of times organizations will say, I need to come up with a new incentive scheme to encourage innovation. And I should say scheme in the Singapore context is a good, not bad word. So I need a new incentive program to encourage innovation. And we'll often say, yeah, probably you should, but that, again, often isn't the problem. So let me tell you kind of a wacky story to tell you what the actual problem is. The story takes us back in time about 5 years ago, 2016, and it's about an incident that happened at the condo association we lived in Singapore. We got a letter describing the incident. The letter said, your children were found vandalizing the basketball court using some materials. And because it's Singapore and there are cameras everywhere, there were these grainy CCTV footage of this incident happening. What actually happened on the Sunday afternoon in question? The kids were bored. They said, Dad, can we go down to the basketball court and draw a baseball diamond on it and play baseball? They used chalk as the mechanism that they wrote on the basketball court. These were the materials used on the Sunday afternoon in question. It later goes on in the letter to say, fortunately, our cleaners managed to remove the stains. The cleaners did nothing. The thing that removed the stains were the skies. The first drop of rain came before we even left. By the time we got back up to our condo, no evidence that we had ever been there. So let's zoom into somebody who was sitting on the court. At the time, my 5-year-old son, Harry. Harry is a lovable goofball. His nickname at school is Happy Harry. What does Happy Harry make of the chalk incident? The lesson he learns is that even benign creative expression carries a risk of getting slapped on the wrist. He goes to school and learns that there's a right answer to a test and a wrong answer to a test. He goes to an organization and he learns there's a right way to do things and a wrong way to do things. Happy Harry's there. He's inside of him, but he's constrained and contained. This is the basic problem inside organizations. It's not the rewards you receive if you succeed. It's the perception of punishment if you fail. Because the perception of punishment is so high, because you know that failure is a dirty word, and you know when you try and do something different, it might not work, people don't do anything at all. Happy Harry sits inside, he doesn't come out. So again, this is one of our missions, to release the Happy Harrys that exist inside every organization. And in our view, it's not about a bigger carrot. It's not about a bigger reward. It's about changing the way you think about the stick, changing the way you think about the punishment if things don't go well.
I think that's the title of your next book, Releasing the Happy Harry. I know if I saw that book in the business section, I would have to pick it up and say, what is he talking about? Who's Happy Harry? Why are we releasing him? That would be that magic title that would definitely get my interest. Now, Scott, you talk a lot about DBS Bank, and I was attracted to that because in one of the chapters, I think it's they use the three initials DBS, and people call it the damn bloody slow bank, or did I get it right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Now, what did they do that was so innovative and took them from a minor local bank to worldwide?
Yeah, and it really is an amazing story, and I'll give you kind of the summary version of it, and of course the book explores it in more depth. So the Damn Bloody Slow is what its local moniker was back when I moved to Singapore in 2010. It was the largest bank in Singapore, but had the lowest customer satisfaction scores. The lines for its ATMs were legendary, so people just didn't like it. So that was 2010. You fast forward to today, it is widely known as the best bank, not in Singapore, not in Asia, but in the entire world. So how did this happen? How did it go from a slow-moving company that biased to regulatory compliance to an innovation pioneer? Well, their CEO, Piyush Gupta, set a pretty big goal. He said, I want us to be the world's best bank. I want us to function not like a stodgy, slow-moving bank, but like a 28,000-person startup. I want us not to compete against banks, but against people like Google and Amazon and Netflix and Apple and LinkedIn and Facebook. Those were not accidentally chosen companies. If you put the D for DBS in between all of those letters, it forms the word Gandalf, the wizard from Lord of the Rings. They wanted to be a Gandalf company. Now, how actually did they do this? The heart of the story is a human story. Paul Cobbin is the co-author of the book. He is the Chief Data and Transformation Officer at DBS. His observation is nothing changes unless the behavior of your people changes. And the big thing that DBS did was unleash the equivalent of Happy Harry's inside its 28,000 employees. Get all of them to begin to follow the habits that drive innovation success, and then use innovation in lots of different ways. Shorten the lines at the ATMs. come up with new products that allow people to bank in more effective, more efficient ways, go to new markets like India and Indonesia, the full power of innovation unleashed everywhere. And the secret behind the story is the smart use of beans, using these behavior enablers, artifacts, and nudges that we talked about before to encourage the behaviors that drive innovation success. And that's probably enough to give the highlights of the story. I'd be happy if you're interested to share a couple of my favorite DBS beans if you'd like.
Well, I do like the one about the time because I'm a time person, and I think they cut down. There's a term they use, like 1 million or 2 million man hours or something. Can you tell us about that? What they did there?
Yeah, this is one of the things that I think DBS has done exceedingly well. So DBS puts a metric on everything. So as they're early on in their innovation journey, they say, what is something that we can go and focus on and improve that everybody would like? Nobody wants less time. Everybody wants more time. So they said, how much time are our customers wasting? Standing in the ATM lines, being on the virtual line when you call into a call center or whatever. And how do we go and figure out innovative ways to go and approach it? Some of it is just really simple stuff. Like people would go to the ATMs and the real thing that they were looking for is to figure out what their balance was, but they'd have to type in their PIN, they'd have to go and click all these buttons on the screen, etc. They then created a new option that said, we'll show you your balance in the beginning before you go through any of these things. So it's really simple stuff like that, but it comes from investing the time to understand the customer, what it is that they're actually looking to do, and thinking about different ways that you can achieve it. Now, some of it gets more sophisticated, using what's known as big data analytics to try to predict when will a particular ATM go down. As they began to do this, they noticed that there was a correlation between where the ATMs were located and how often they needed to be maintained. Those that were near places where people bought fresh fish, as an example, needed to be replaced frequently because the scales from the fish would get on people's hands. This is a little gross. And they would then get in the ATM. If you know that, you can begin to say that we'll change the cycle with which we go and clean and update the ATMs. Again, some of this stuff is pretty simple stuff. This is not the same thing as going and launching a new offer in a completely different market, but they added up to that type of time saving that you talked about before. They've done it inside the bank too. They have this amazing thing that they introduced a few years ago called Meeting Mojo, which has given the people inside the bank the gift of 500,000 hours. What is Meeting Mojo? Very quickly, Meeting Mojo is a ritual to make meetings more effective and more efficient. Every meeting has a meeting owner. They're responsible for the meeting starting on time, ending on time, clear decisions being made, everybody participating. They appoint a Joe, a joyful observer. The Joe is watching the meeting. If people are not active, if they're not participating, the Joe can say, time out, put your phones down, come back to the Zoom screen, whatever. At the end of the meeting, the Joe gives public feedback to the Mo. How well did you do your job? After the meeting ends, everyone goes to an app and rates how well did the Mo and the Joe do. This has been amazingly effective. Before Mojo was introduced, 40% of people said that meetings were collaborative. Today, it's 90%. And again, 500,000 employee hours were saved. This is the power of innovation everywhere.
I love it. My meeting organizer says I have to wrap things up. So I want to thank you for being with us today. Once again, give us the website.
EatSleepInnovate.com. And thanks, Bill. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a lot of fun, and I love releasing Happy Harry. I'd like our audience to know that you've been listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan, asking you to please join us again next week at the same time when we will continue our journey to success.